actually, you can read the book when you don't want to fall asleep. Read the book because then it stirs you up, and then you have to. It gets you going.
It's good that I started like 3 weeks ago because I can only read 10 pages at a time.
Yeah. It is not. Morning. Hello. 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 Nice to have you among us. I'm here every day. Nice to have you. Okay. Everything okay? Everything okay? Has he been sticking to his diet? Has he been sticking to his diet? Has he been sticking to his diet? Yeah. Yeah, no, I know. Last year you lost all the weight. Yeah. Yeah. Well, 270s is not sustainable. You're not gonna. Yeah.
So I don't know if you want to say something. We just heard that Ernie Goodman was in the hospital.
Oh,
And
I
to
didn't know.
send our prayers to, no, he's coming out. I think it's hemoglobin went out. He had a blood transfusion, but he's coming out. So you can say something, because he's trying to stream in.
Oh, he is. Okay, sure. Good morning, everyone. Um, it's I get the back row fill. Is this so you always sit in the front? They're all in the back row. Usually the usually the poorly behaved kids sit in the back. They're the troublemakers. They're they're the cool kids of the. That's right. So good morning. So just a few things. First of all, thank you for having me back at this semester of MID. And I understand that Rabbi Alexander spent the last semester talking about Jewish criminals, gangsters, and pirates. Wonderful, which will prepare us for what I'd like to study with you this semester, which is the Bible. And not kidding. Well, we'll talk about what I was hoping that we can do in just a few minutes, but we'll give a little bit of an introduction to that. But before that, I understand that Ernie was decided to pay the folks in Tarzana a little bit of a visit with the medical staff at the hospital. So he's home now and watching streaming. So I thought we'd make Rosie had a good idea to make a blessing for him, which I think is a wonderful idea. So thank you, Rosie, for that idea. So, so we'll wait. Okay, stall. Give me the. Rabbis are good at stalling. Just give us the microphone and get out of the way. We're okay. Better? Yeah. Okay. Um, Good morning. And, just a suggestion for, well, okay. So Ernie will be joining us in a moment. Let me start then. Susie, you'll let us know when he, you don't know? Okay, yeah, let me just go on. All right, how about this? Let me give a little bit of an introduction, and then we'll make a prayer for him and a prayer for the study. Okay, so again, I am Rabbi Brian Schuldenfrei, and I thought, like, for the past 3, 4, maybe longer years, we've studied rabbinic literature together. We've studied specifically some stories of the rabbis, and I try to present you with material that was, yes, that was controversial, but just steamy. Try to get you steamy. And I was thinking, what steamy literature could we talk about this semester? And I thought that we'd do something a little bit different, which I haven't done in a few years, which is to study the Bible. And quite frankly, the Bible, what is not, when people are like, oh, Bible study, they kind of think of like milk and cookies and clean and tucked in shirts and, very like proper, demure conversation. And that ain't the Bible. The Bible is loud and spirited and controversial and textured. So I thought that what we would do is spend some time studying the first book of the Bible, Genesis, and then having conversation as we go through the stories. I don't have most often when I've done this before, I try and map out like every week and what we're going to cover, and then by the second week I've already talked too much and that's out the window. So I'm not going to do that. We're going to study the text, and we'll see where it leads us. So I guess what I'd ask, and we don't have to do that right this minute, because I think today is going to be more of an introduction. But and I also will teach at the 11 o'clock slot. So this is my question, and maybe Rosie, you can write it down as a reminder for yourself. During the break, I'm the cleanup crew for Rabbi Goodman. So during the break, if you could help yourself to a Eitz Chaim Chumash, they will be left out right where they are over there. So in the future, I teach at 11. I'm just covering for Rabbi Goodman today at 10. Yeah, so during the break, grab yourself a book. If anyone needs a help because the books are heavy, we can help you bring it to your seat. But today he is, I think. I'm saying ordinarily on the 11 o'clock slot. So after Rabbi Goodman finishes, get yourself a cookie, a cup of tea, coffee is not really much to talk about, and the book, okay? And then, so just have the book so we don't have to spend the first 20 minutes of the class passing out books. Okay, that's the first order of business. Second order of business is to define our terms. We are studying the Bible, but specifically we're studying a book from the Torah, and we are studying the book of Genesis. So a few things. What is the difference between the Bible and the Torah? Can anyone raise their hand and offer? Bridget, you want to tell us the difference between the Bible and the Torah? Right. The Torah has the first 5 books. By the way, everyone agrees. Okay, the Torah has the first 5 books. Let's see if we can name them. So we're studying the book of Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, Deuteronomy, Bereshit, Shemot, Vayikra, Bamidbar, Devarim. That is the Chumash, or 5, the Torah, and that is the first, the 5 books of Moses. It is a little chilly here. Okay. So, yes, Zissel. All right. Yeah. You can't disagree with that one, Zissel. Go ahead.
Also, the first 5 books is also known as the
Yeah, the Pentateuch, right? Yeah, with which is a good. Yeah, you want to show people it's a Pentateuch, right? Yeah, it's a good smart word. It's just I'm not as sophisticated as you are, but that is a good. That is a good. Usually, it's people who use words like the Pentateuch, Zissel, don't sit in the back row. They sit in the front. They sit in the front, and they put right. Like if you use the word like you sing in the front, you can use the word Pentateuch. You sit in the back, can't use that. Go ahead, Zissel. Yes, sir. Wait, there's too much talking in the class. Go ahead, Zissel. Did you just call us a cuckoo? You said pentacuckoo. Wow. See, you're now you should be giving the class, not even sitting in the front, Zissel. It's very good. Okay. So we are going to study the first 5 books, and Bridget, thank you for pointing that out. And how does the Torah relate to the Bible? Like I use the word, we are studying this is the Jewish Study Bible. And it has, so what is the relationship between the Torah and the Bible? Yeah, there's more books. That's right. Right, good. The Torah is only the first section of the Hebrew Bible. The Hebrew Bible, or the Tanakh, is divided into 3 sections. Tanakh is an acronym for Torah, Nevi'im, which are prophets, and Ketuvim, which are writings. Could someone name a book that's found in Nevi'im, or prophets? Isaiah, give me another one. Samuel, give me another one. You buy one, get one free. 1 Samuel and 2 Samuel. Go ahead, what else? Joshua, good. Kings, Judges, yeah. Good, so you guys know those are Nevi'im. And then Ketuvim, or writings, which is the 3rd section of the Hebrew Bible, has what in it? Psalms, Proverbs. We're going to be reading about her in a little less than a month. Rhymes with Shmester, Esther. Okay, so those are the writings. Torah, Nevi'im, and Ketuvim together. Torah, Nevi'im, prophets, writings, Tanakh, the Jewish Bible. Tanakh means Bible. You can use those terms interchangeably, okay? Tanakh, Bible. Now, there are differences in all Jewish denominations. So either us, our Reform friends, our Orthodox friends, everyone agrees, like the Tanakh is canonized, meaning it is fixed. The 24 books of the Tanakh, there's no argument about like what is in the Bible. All Jews agree what is canonized as biblical literature. All Jews agree. Now we disagree, and we'll get to this in just a few minutes, about how to read the Bible, but we agree that the Bible is the Bible, right? There's no disagreement. That's not the same for our Christian friends. So our Christian friends have, first of all, their Bible obviously looks different than ours in that they have the Gospels, the teaching, which is not a canonized work for Jews. There's nothing wrong with reading the Gospels, but we don't think of it as a sacred text for us. And so there's the Gospels, and they would call that the New Testament. I don't use the word New Testament because I'll give you an example why I don't use the word New Testament. If I go into Best Buy and I have to buy my kid a computer for high school, and there's 2 computers, the old computer and the new computer, and my son's saying, oh, classes are so hard, and which one am I going to buy? the new computer. I'm not going to buy the old computer. So old new implies there's a supersession, right? There's the new, there's the improved. The only time it never worked, it didn't work, was with New Coke. You remember that from the 1980s? Like they introduced that and then that was out the door. Like New Coke, no one bought it. It was disgusting. But every other time in the history of the world that they've used the word new, no one wants the old. We don't use the word Old Testament, right? Because then, like, who wants the Old Testament if you can get the New Testament, right? I explain that, so I call it the Christian Bible or the Gospels when I'm talking with my Christian friends or preachers or whatnot, but I don't use the word Old Testament. You know, it's not kind of our thing. Now, also, there are differences in how they have, what texts they see as sacred, as opposed to Jews, where we have unanimous agreement, Christians do not. Mainly, and I don't want to get down, this is for the fancy students in the back, like Zissel, this is more of a, there's a distinction between the Apocrypha, which is canonized in the Catholic Bible, but not canonized in the Protestant Bible. So there's differences, and there's differences in order and all this. All Jews, we keep it the same. Now, another point of information just about the layout of the Bible. On Shabbat, every week, we read from Parsha. If you had to start, what's a Parsha? What would you say that is? It's interesting, not necessarily a chapter. A portion, right. Now, what's interesting is the nomenclature, the system of the naming, is chapters and parshiot, or Torah portions, don't necessarily line up. Sometimes they do, but chapter and verse is actually a Christian innovation that we somehow, we use it too. But parsha, or Torah portion, is the chunk that you read for that week, for the Parshat HaShavua, the Torah portion of the week. Okay.
Okay, I have a question.
Okay.
I'm trying to formulate a theory. When were vowels introduced to I mean, I know it's not in the, when you're reading the Torah, there's no vowels. When did they introduce vowels so that other people who were not well-versed in reading Torah could read Torah?
Good. So the truth is, they must have had the vowels from the beginning, because otherwise you can't read it, right? It doesn't make. But when did they codify it?
Yes, because I want to know when non-Jews were able to read with vowels. Because, as I said, I have a theory.
Okay. So, the question is about the vowels that are in the Torah or in the Tanakh, the whole Bible. If you go, if you went to the Reagan Library last spring when they showed the Dead Sea Scrolls. Yeah, we did, that's right. There was a field trip that right. Did you go on that field trip? Okay, good. So there was the trip to the Reagan, and if you looked at the scrolls, like a Torah scroll, there are no vowels in it for other biblical books as well. So it must have been that there was some vocalized traditions from the very beginning, because otherwise you can't read, there is no word without a vowel, right? You need vowels for words. It's just language. However, I think your question is, when were the system of vowels that we now read and use, or how old are those? And that is well over 1,000 years old. It's called the Masoretic text. Thank you, Rosie. Yeah, the Masoretic text. And the Masoretes were considered from northern Israel, and they were considered to be like really schooled, and there were different like schools of thought within them, but basically they were schooled in the vocalization and the grammar of the Hebrew Bible. The Rambam, Maimonides, he says the Masoretic text is the correct text. So from Maimonides on, so we're thinking, early Middle Ages on, so we're talking about almost 1,000 years, but it's been the absolute authoritative text. And as Jews, again, we don't have there's no differences between like myself and like Rabbi Haransky. Like it's like everyone accepts that as it's universally accepted. Okay. So if you actually go to, it's a sad story, but if you go, how many of you have been to Israel? Okay, so not everyone, but okay. So if you go to Israel, and how many of you have been to the Israel Museum in Jerusalem? If you go to the top, and then how many of you have been to the exhibit on the Dead Sea Scrolls? Oh, only no. So I needed the one in Israel. Okay. So there's the scroll of the book. Is that beautiful building, and yeah, it looks like a Torah, the Eitz Chaim. But if you go downstairs, so the Isaiah scroll is like on the upstairs, and so it's like go downstairs, and like right by the staircase, there is the oldest copy of a Masoretic text that we have. It's called the Aleppo Codex. A codex is a book. It's called the Aleppo. It's like a Zissel. It's like a Pentateuch kind of word, right? Codex. You want to sound smart? You use the word codex. Don't call it a book. Buy your books on Amazon, but buy your codexes, at the museum. Anyway, the Aleppo Codex was started out probably. The history, I think it was written in northern Israel. Anyway, it became known as the Aleppo Codex because it was guarded and preserved by the Syrian Jewish community. And it was kept under lock and key. And because it was known as the oldest Masoretic text with the nikud, the vowels, it was scholars from all over the world wanted access to it, and the Aleppo Jewish community was very guarded about letting people in. And it was a complete text of the entire Hebrew Bible. And a funny thing happened in November of 1947 when I wasn't alive, but most of you were, which is that they had the vote on the partition plan in the United Nations, and the Jewish world erupted in celebration. Well, the Arabs didn't. And in Aleppo, in Syria, they rioted, and they burned Jewish businesses, and they burned Jewish synagogues, and they also burned the Aleppo Codex. So most of the Torah piece, it's of the Tanakh, but most of the Torah portion of the Codex was destroyed, or at least lost. And then there's if you're looking for a book of like Jewish intrigue and mystery, there's a book by Mati Friedman, who's an Israeli journalist, Israeli American. I think he was or Canadian. His first language is English, and he writes in English. And he writes beautifully, but he writes about the story of the Aleppo Codex. And the Aleppo Codex was made its way back into Israel, and it's sort of like a study of spies and intrigue and all that kind of good stuff. But now it's in the Israel Museum, but it's no longer complete. It's there's only a few sections of the Torah that are left, and it was the most complete. There's another older section of the Masoretic text that was purchased by the Anu Museum of Tel Aviv, which is the old diaspora museum, and they have it on display. It's now one of the oldest Masoretic texts. And I took a group. We'll see if we get a chance. Like I took a group when we were volunteering just a few years ago with Adat, and I brought one of the younger people who had just learned to read Hebrew, and I was like, "Read that line," and she read the line. It was the Shema, and to see you could read the Shema in the oldest Hebrew Bible. It was pretty powerful. Yeah. Okay. So these are all introductions about the Tanakh. There is oh my gosh. We're already behind in the semester. We just started talking for half an hour already. My God. Yeah, that's right. Right. I know. Rabbi Alexander tells me. Okay. So we're going to pause here just for a minute to make a blessing for Ernie and to wish him well. So if we can just all close our eyes for a second. Mishe berach avotinu Avraham Yitzchak v'Yaakov tzar Rivka Rachel v'Leah hu yivarech v'yirapeh et hacholeh HaKodesh Baruch Hu Yimlei Rachamim Alav L'Hachzika L'Rupuata V'Yishlach Lo Me'era Refuah Shlema Min HaShamayim Refuat HaNefesh Refuat HaGuf B'Tok Sharech L'Yisrael Hashla Bagalav B'Zman Kariv V'Nomar Amen. May God grant Ernie a speedy recovery, and may we all think of him and offer him help in whatever capacity we are able, and let us all say Amen. Susie. And anyone else who's not feeling well who may be watching. Right. To the millions online. Okay. To the dozen in attendance and the millions online. Okay. Okay, so that is Ernie. Now we're going to make a bracha for Torah study. This is usually Warren's, usually supposed to remind me about making the blessing for the Torah study, Warren. But Baruch Atah Adonai Eloheinu Melech Haolam Asher Kidshanu B'mitzvotav V'tzivanu La'asok B'divrei Torah. And may our study of Torah enhance our lives and enhance our capacity to be better people in this world. Amen. Okay. So there is actually just a survey. How many of you raise your hand if you've ever read the entire Bible? No, there's no old and new. That's what I was talking about. There's just the Bible, the Tanakh. Okay. Raise your hand if you've read the entire Torah before. Close. Okay. Raise your hand if you've read the book of Sefer Bereshit or the book of Genesis before. Okay, so good amount. Right, so you started with the juicy stuff, right? Okay, good. So not all of you, but it's been a while. Okay. There is a rabbinic saying about the Torah. And usually, by the way, this is just important to define our terms. When I say Torah, sometimes I mean like something from the first 5 books, but also Torah means like more expansively like the wider Jewish thought, or like anything like insight related, like, Torah teaches. I'm not necessarily meaning, Numbers chapter 15, verse 3. It can mean more of like Jewish thought, Jewish idea, Jewish, like the thrust of our tradition teaches. Does that make sense? Okay. So I'll try and be careful here when we're actually studying the Torah, what I mean by this. But there is a comment that the rabbis make, and I'd like to hear your thoughts about it. As a way of introducing how we're going to study Torah. And what the rabbis say is, Yesh Shivim Panim LeTorah, which means literally there are 70 faces to the Torah. And that idea is going to be sort of our motto for how we approach our Torah study this semester. Yesh Shivim Panim LeTorah. There are 70 faces to the Torah. Does anyone want to venture what they think that means? There are 70 faces to the Torah. To the scholar in the back, Zissel, go ahead.
Really, to me, what it means is there are 70 different possible interpretations to the Torah, depending on how you read it, how you understand it, how Torah to you.
Good. So Zissel said that there are 70 interpretations to the Torah. Good. Good. So Rosalie says, Zissel, how dare you? No, she didn't say that. That's right. It's getting a little hot in here. Yeah, I wish it'll get hot in here too. I'm sorry, you're cold. Do you want to? Okay. So Rosalie said, but Zissel, Rosalie comes to Shabbat services every week. Hint, hint, hint. And Rosalie says, you like that? That was a little, to the people who don't come, they'll, Anyway, Rosalie says, I've heard there are countless interpretations, 70,000 even, or more. Okay. Anyone else? Yeshivim Panim the Torah. There are 70 faces to the Torah. Lana says and I'm going to use a first row term, is the number 70. Everyone agrees with this, but they say, people in the back, are literalists. But people in the front are, Rosalie's in the front, so, or in the back, depending on how you look at yeah. All right, but Lana said it's, the number 70, is it a formulaic number? Is it not, aren't we not supposed to read 70 as an actual number, but it's like 40 or 7, 7 days of the week? Or on Passover, 4 cups of wine, 4 questions, 4 children. Is it the 70 formulaic in that it's not a literal number, but a number that means something else? The kids are now saying, I don't know if you've heard this, 6-7, 6-7. Well, that 613 we changed it. We've had that for a while. So 6-7. You know what the cultural relevance of 6-7 is? Nothing. It has no cultural reference. It's just annoying. But the way that we've actually gotten them to stop is by saying it ourselves. Once we have claimed the term, they don't want to say it anymore. So once I was a camp counselor, and I wasn't a camp counselor, I was the unit head at Camp Ramah, and all the kids started dyeing their hair, all different colors. I was like, watch, we're going to stop this tomorrow. So I dyed my hair. No one did it after that. I instantly made it uncool when I dyed my hair green. That was it. No one wanted to do it anymore. They're like, if he's doing it. Yes. We'll get there. It literally means instruction. And it could... Yes, sorry. Rosalie said, Rabbi, enough hearing about your camp days. Your green hair is very interesting. But let's get back to the subject at hand. What is the Torah? What does the word come from? And it comes from the word instruction, or the root is yud resh hey, And it could also have references to like an arrow, not an arrow. Yeah, like hitting the mark, right? But it means instruction. Like when the Torah actually refers to itself as the Torah, it means like the instructions. It doesn't mean the Torah. With, you know, when it says the Torah, it means like this, it refers to itself as instructions, not as the Torah, right? Okay, but it literally means instruction. Okay, I want to get back to this Yeshivim Panim LeTorah. There are 70 faces to the Torah. Let's say that, like if we take a combination of all of you, that you're onto it, that it's interpretive, that 70 is indicative of a big number. It means that there are, the way it's classically read, that teaching, is that there are endless ways of seeing and interpreting the text. And so that is what makes, even if you have read the book of Genesis before, what makes this interesting is that there will be perspectives that will be brand new to the world in this forum. Someone will come up with something that's never been said before. And you may think of something or see the text in a certain way, and your husband or wife or friend may disagree and see it very differently. But in Judaism, and this is like really what defines us, and sometimes other religions don't, like they're fascinated by it because it's so different. Like, we're not threatened by multiple interpretations of something. In fact, we celebrate it. I mean, that's what the whole Talmud, which is what we've been studying for the past, like we're not monolithic, and we're not really terribly doctrinal. And so like even different exegetes or different interpreters of the text, some of the more famous ones like Rashi, like he introduces, he'll say like, oh, it could mean this, it could mean that, and it could mean that. Like, he's not afraid of introducing multiple possibilities, even if they are mutually exclusive from one another, if they contradict one another, not challenging. So I love that, like that in our tradition, like there's a lot of room for a robust and very colored interpretive discussion on the Torah. Lydia, yeah.
That is also why there are so many different, I wouldn't say versions, but there's Orthodox, there's conservative, Reform, Reconstruct. I mean, all these, and all of these, even though it's based on the Hebrew Bible, the interpretations are all different.
Yeah, so let me like nudge a little bit with what you said. There's never been one Judaism. There's always been Judaisms. In other words, our people have never there's a misnomer, oh, everyone's grandfather and grandmother were Orthodox. That's just not true. In fact, there was no Orthodox. So there's just been different ways. That's a modern innovation. The actual term was in response to the Reform movement, that they would even call themselves Orthodox. But the idea, Judaism has always had different people seeing the text in different ways and responding in different ways with their practice. That's something that's embedded in our tradition for thousands of years. Further, the terms or the movements, which actually, if you talk to your one generation under me, like the millennials, right? So I'm 51, The millennials are, in their mid 30s, early 40s. The movement thing doesn't speak to them at all. It's gone. And that's okay. I'm not as much a conservative Jew as I am a Jew, right? I don't really, okay, I went to a conservative Jewish seminary, but I'm not like a company kind of guy. If I'm okay with people becoming really good Reform or Orthodox Jews, I'm not, and I think that there is room for something new to emerge, which I think is what is actually happening. But anyway, these denominational titles, the one way that they are instructive, though, is their orientation towards text. And maybe with this, I'll conclude. And that is that in Orthodoxy, well, here, let me ask you the question. You'll think about it, and then I'll pipe in. What's the difference between the way, if we just isolate the movements that we speak of? So Orthodox, Reform, Conservative, and Reconstructionist. What's the difference in the way they view the Bible? Does anyone want to raise their hand and offer?
Well, I would say that with Orthodox, they have a literal translation, and that it is literal, that this is God's word, and God wrote the Bible.
They don't, that's the most important thing. They don't say that, it's not, there's interpretation, it's not literal. It's interpretive, but they believe that the God authored, certainly there are parts of the Tanakh, not necessarily that they are divinely inspired or from the prophet, but they believe the Torah, every last word of the Torah, every last letter was written by God. Okay. Every last word was written by God. Now, what you mean, now they still need interpretation, but they also think the system of interpretation was given by God. So God wrote the book and told you how to interpret it, especially the legal formula for how to interpret it, and it's all, so there's a divine, it's actually, I don't know if it's like this at all, but it's like Mahjong, right? You get tiles every year, right? Card, right? And the company writes, is it one company? Boy, I want to get in on that. The association. Oh, I want to be a stockholder in that company, right? That's a good business. But anyway, they write the cards. And then they give you a set of rules to interpret the card, to play with the cards, right? That's orthodoxy. They believe it's all written by one source, and then the system of interpretation is here are the rules to play. You can play it differently, but you could see Rashi can argue with Ibn Ezra on something, but it's within a framework of rules which they believe is divine. Now, here's where it gets a little bit more complicated. What's the difference? So how does conservative and Reform and Reconstructionists differ with their relationship to the Torah? Right. Essentially, that you don't look at the Torah as the work of one divine hand, but you see human authorship in the Torah. A great book to read if you just want to kind of get a very basic flavor on what's called biblical source criticism, meaning the Bible or the Torah comes from different sources, is Who Wrote the Bible by Richard Elliott Friedman. It's a good book to get from Barnes & Noble that kind of gives you the basic. It's not like, written in academic terms. It's written for an educated layperson to read. Okay. So me, my Reform colleagues, my Reconstructionist colleagues, my trans-denominational colleagues, everyone would agree, except for our Orthodox friends, that there's multiple authors. So then what's the difference between conservative, Reform, and Reconstructionist? Okay. Bridget, go ahead. So if you think about the name is say a lot. Reform is a reform movement, and so they believe in individual autonomy. I mean, they are products of the Enlightenment and individual liberty, and think that it really flourished in America. If you think about American values, perhaps like the pinnacle of American value is the liberty of the individual. That's not the pinnacle value of Judaism, by the way. Like, we're different than right? In Judaism, there's much more of a emphasis, well, maybe my Reform colleague would disagree with me, I don't know, on the collective. But anyway, in Reform Judaism, they try and emphasize the individual. And they would say that these books were written by people for a certain time, place, and milieu. And as a result, now you as an individual have the individual autonomy to decide what is relevant and meaningful for you, and you opt in and out as you see fit. You want to keep kosher? Fine. You want to eat bacon cheeseburger? Fine. It is individual autonomy. Okay. Then conservative says, hey, we recognize the multiple authors of the text, but why throw the baby out with the bathwater? As we recognize the multiple voices in the legal system, why not just say, okay, so the Torah was written by people. What's the big deal? It could still be binding. Law can be the U.S. Constitution was written by people. So, okay, so we can have the Torah. It's written by people. So we believe in a legal system that sort of evolves. It recognizes the human hand in everything. So we're a little bit more quick to change than Orthodoxy. I'd offer to say that Orthodox changes as well. It's just a little bit slower, but we are conservative. We are slower with the change than the Reform, right? Who are, hey, whatever works for you, you can do. And then they changed the name of the denomination, by the way. They're called Reconstructing Judaism. Is this idea of once you realize that it was not written all by God, how do you reconstruct a relationship with the text? And it is based on more of this idea of custom rather than compulsory practice. Okay.
So Jesus was a Reconstructionist Jew?
I actually think we're all Reconstructionist Jews, quite frankly, but that's another discussion. So here's where I want to end for today. What I want to, yeah, go ahead.
I'm just dying to know where you think Judaism is headed. That was, a few minutes ago you said you had an idea about where Judaism was headed.
I think denominationalism is, I think that we're going to see, I don't want to say, I don't want to be, denominationalism is dead, all the Jewish journals, and they write articles. I think that the contours of Jewish community that have defined us largely in America since post-World War II are coming to an end. Or are at least not as representative of the millennial generation under me is not so interested in the terminologies and they're not interested in institutions. I mean, in many ways, they mirror, a lot of you are baby boomers. They mirror you more closely than like you were baby boomers, and you were largely shaped by Watergate and Vietnam. Is that a fair, right? That Watergate and Vietnam shaped your worldview, or how you, like, your relationship with authority, your relationship with your thoughts about government. Okay, and so they are much more, just as a generation, they are much more, than my generation, which is Gen X, Gen Z. Um, and so my generation is actually considered like the selfish generation. Like, my generation was the Michael Douglas, what was that Wall Street movie, Make Money. And it was all about like we accepted, the race up the ladder, and we accepted the ladder as authoritative, that this is the instructions, you play by the rule, like race to achieve success, but success is determined by a certain, and then the millennials are like, want to deconstruct the board of, or the ladder of success and redefine it. And, like we kind of laugh, like my colleagues, like every like millennial rabbi is like, life work balance. And like, like, what are you talking about? We don't even know, like, you work until you like have calluses, and that's when you stop. But anyway, so where do I think it's going? So I think less denominationalism. I think the millennials are asking good questions in terms of meaning. American Judaism and Israeli Judaism are also going a little bit differently, which is kind of interesting because politically also things are difficult with the next generation in terms of Zionism, which is something else we could talk about. But the Israeli younger generation is rerouting themselves in tradition in very interesting ways, like especially the Sephardic communities. Like if you listen to Israeli pop music, it's a very influenced by religious text, religious and religious ideas, and sacred text quotes, and so anyway, it's just fascinating. So I don't know where it's going, but those are a few patterns that I see as to what happens next. I don't know. I'm maybe not the right guy. I can share a few ideas, but instead of looking to the future, I'm going to look to the root where we all began, which is the book of Genesis. So with that, an understanding that yeshivim panim leTorah, like that phrase that I said earlier, that there are multiplicity of ways of interpreting our text, perhaps even an endless variety of ways of looking at the text, which makes the possibility of discussion in this forum or in any forum there's endless possibility. And the way that you will see different figures, like I asked you earlier to raise your hand at certain points of what you had studied, the way you see the text now when you re-encounter it will be different than the way it's like seeing it, in a much more sophisticated way. It's like when you watch a movie, when you rewatch, I'm doing this now, I'm rewatching movies that I loved as either a kid or a young adult with my kids, who are now on the precipice of being young adults. And it's fascinating with how I look at the movie and see, yeah, right? Like it's right. I'm a different person, and as a father, I'm a different. So anyway, how we see the text, and it's also shaped by how we see the world. And that's very clear also in classical rabbinic interpretations. What they were experiencing in the world very profoundly and significantly shaped how they interpreted the Torah. So we'll re-encounter the Torah together with the living by the principle of yeshivim panim leTorah, that there are 70 multiplicity of ways of interpretation. we're going to assume the biblical source criticism. In other words, my interpretive lens, and if you feel differently, that's fine. You can bring that to the table. But I just want to let you know my assumption in the text is that there is the human hand of authorship, and I'll even try and point out at various times, like, oh, and you see how this is structured? This is indicative of this type of author and that type of author. So I will come in with that assumption. You don't have to buy it. You just have to know that that's what I'm coming in with. Okay, so with that, we're going to conclude today. We're going to wish Ernie and everyone who's watching online, we're going to wish them well, and then I'm going to remind you, and you'll remind everyone, that next week, Rabbi Goodman will go first, and during the break, if you could help yourself to one of the books, so we'll just hop right into the text. That will be good. And I'll also show you how to navigate that text so you can use it as a study, a resource for study at home. Okay, so I look forward to studying with everyone, and have a wonderful day, and please stay warm. Okay.
Thanks for switching today.
It happened to work out.
I may need to ask you to do it one more time. I'm not sure when, but if you can. Yeah. Hillside called me to come down and meet with them because they want to bring me on as one of their rabbis to do funerals. Everybody else calls me except Hillside, but they didn't know me. And now that he knows me, he's like, oh yeah, definitely, we want to meet you. Come. But I got on the freeway this morning, a huge accident on the 101, a huge accident on the 405. So I just called him and said, it's not going to happen this morning. So he said, we'll reschedule.
Okay. Well,
I think the only time to happen is Wednesday morning.
sure. So, yeah, like as far as like there's, I mean, I gave them dates that I definitely could not do for the rest of the week, and then, oh yeah,
That's what you're referring to, right?
yeah, but we'll use that next time.
Yeah.
I don't know Rabbi Goodman. I don't think he's using it.
Okay, so there's him back there. Don't take him. All right.
You can think it's a good book. So read it.
All right.
Nothing wrong with that. Yeah. So when I'm able to, if I'm able to, then I can, and if I can,
Yeah. Great. Thank you so much.
And good luck with that. I hope it works out for you.
Yeah, it'd be nice. Like I said, they're the only ones that, I'm up in Eden this afternoon. They call me all the time. Sinai calls me all the time. So, all right. Thank you so much.
Keeps the mortgage for the kid, right?
That is an understatement.
Yeah. Yeah, we're good. So before I leave, I want to make a shameless plug. But if you, and I know you all do, appreciate the work of Rosalie and Susie in putting this together every year, then one way you can express gratitude is, just one second. One way that you can express gratitude is Susie is one of her honorees at the gala, the synagogue gala, a week and a half, right? So not this coming Saturday, but the week after. And if you would like to buy tickets, I think this is your last call to buy tickets to the gala. If that is not for you, you can certainly make a donation in Susie's honor to the synagogue for the gala and honor her. But it's going to be a really special night, and we're going to take pictures, and we'll bring them here. We'll show you all the pictures. Susie's going to look nice. She always looks nice, but we look forward to honoring Susie. I think we'd all agree it's a well-deserved honor. So let's give her a round of applause, and then if you could open your wallets as a demonstration of support, that would be wonderful. Okay, everyone, have a great day. I don't know how much a ticket is, but yeah, $200. Do I hear 250? 300? So if you want to make a donation, you want to come, whatever you, for $20,000, I'll cook you dinner.
So how are things with you? Are you okay? They never fix that. I don't even know what the ticket is. Okay.
Except I got on the freeway and there's a huge
Oh my
accident on
God.
101 and there's a huge accident on 405.
Yes, I know.
So I called them and they said, forget it, we'll reschedule. So
Yeah, because it's a mess. Yeah, the 405 was. Okay. The 405 had a major accident, La Tejera, down forever. And the 101 too. It's so terrible. When I go downtown, I hold my breath. I just, whoa. What?
Pick that and knock that over. Sorry for the S word.
Oh, that's okay. Look, it's supposedly ready, but it's not.
Good morning, everyone. What's wrong? Oh, okay, I'll try to hold it back again. Lana, do you need some help? I'm sorry, I didn't even notice. I should have run in there and helped. So we'll get started. Just by way of explanation, the last thing that you were just talking about in terms of denominationalism and the borders getting clouded and, yeah. So, so you know that conservative Judaism looks very different in California from how it looks like on the East Coast and Canada, Montreal, etc. And so the lines are quite blurry. Conservative Judaism that we know here on the West Coast looks a lot more like Reform Judaism, with a little bit more strictness. On the East Coast, Montreal, it looks a lot more like Orthodoxy with a little bit of leniency. Very, very different. And there are still some places where there's a mechitza, because remember that the conservative movement allowed the rabbi, who is called in conservative Judaism the Mare Da'atra, the master of the place, to interpret the halakha. And so the choice was given. Do you want a mechitza or do you not want a mechitza? Either way's okay. Some conservative rabbis like it, so they keep it. Fewer and fewer, but it does still exist in some places. My point is, that's why I moved and turned out our synagogue, into an independent synagogue. Independent meaning we're not conservative, we're not Reform, we're not Orthodox, we're just Jewish. And it's because I just got so tired of, are you Reform? Are you Orthodox? Are you conservative? Are you Jewish? That's the only thing I care about. Do you eat a cheeseburger on Shabbat? I don't care. It's none of my business. It's between you and God. The only thing I care about is what kind of a person are you in the world? And when you come in for services, do you feel like you got closer to God while you were with me? That's the only thing I care about. The other stuff is your personal stuff.
I used to belong to humanistic Judaism.
Humanistic.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I'm just wondering how your synagogue relates to God. Is it God? Are you humanistic?
So I have a very good friend who's a humanistic rabbi. I don't understand it, but
It's like a cultural thing.
it's a cultural thing. You don't believe in God. And
You
it's
don't
like,
have to believe in God.
okay, well,
So how does your, but you
yeah, we use a conservative prayer book, a liberal conservative prayer book. But and then I craft different services for Friday nights that are very non-traditional. Saturday mornings are still traditional for people who like it. Anyway, so yes, the lines are blurred. They told me it was too loud, Susie, so I'm keeping it.
think about it, people at home.
Anyway, so I think Rabbi's absolutely correct. You know, the younger folks, they don't want rules, and they don't want structure that way. They want to be spiritual. They want to believe in a higher power, but they don't want us to tell them how they have to believe in that higher power. You see that everywhere, even in Christianity as well, except for evangelicalism. Evangelicalism brings in thousands and thousands of young people who are pretty fundamental in their beliefs. So that's but all my colleagues, all my Christian colleagues, lament the fact that church attendance is down. Everything is down everywhere. Okay. Except in Orthodox synagogues. Yes. This is one of the really beautiful things about Orthodoxy. Like I've told you many, many times, I think there are beautiful, beautiful things about being an Orthodox Jew. It's not for me, or for you, clearly, but there are very beautiful things about a life devoted to God and how you see yourself in the world. It's a beautiful way to live. It brings the young people in, yes, and yes. Yes. Yep. Okay, one more comment, then let's get started. You think part of the problem,
across the board,
across the board,
not just us, it's currently, it's a lack of spirituality.
a lack of spirituality.
That defines the believer from the non-believer. The non-believer just don't feel.
The non-believers don't feel, right?
The believer feels.
And the believer feels.
It's not the set of rules, okay, there are
Yeah.
rules and all that, but it's the feeling of the existence of a higher power.
It's
Beyond
the
all of us.
existence of of a higher power, yes, that some people don't believe in. And you know, final comment. Our generation and older generations grew up with, I think, grew up with a belief in a higher power of some kind. And why was that important to us? Part of it was important to us because of the great catastrophes when we were growing up. Where did we look? We looked to God for help. We looked to God for an anchor. We looked to God for grounding. The younger generations don't look to God for a grounding, I don't think. No. It just is. They find their grounding somewhere else. And so we have smaller attendance.
My neighbor, I was having a conversation with her, she said, what we like at our house is, we like knowing what the rules are, so that is what we do, because it's
Right. Your neighbor says she likes knowing what the rules are, and so that is what they do.
she likes it, and the people in her temple like it,
Yeah.
because they want to know
Exactly what the rules are. We grew up, I think we, older folks, we grew up in a world that had rules, and we liked rules, and we respected rules. And we felt secure living in a world that has rules. The younger generation don't want rules. They want to do whatever they want to do. And so when we try to impose rules on them, they don't like it. They rebel. They don't want to have anything to do with those rules. It's a very different idea of how to live in
there are plenty of people in the, that took part in, that were victims of the Holocaust,
There were plenty of people that were victims of the Holocaust
were rule followers,
that were rule followers. And it did nothing to help them, yes.
and it did nothing to help them, and I think it played a part in the deterioration.
And it played a part, yes, because many of those who experienced the Holocaust remained faithful. Many left because they said, clearly God is not with us. Clearly God is not what we thought God was supposed to be, and therefore they left the religion completely. Yep. Okay. Let's finish up with the Jews of Italy. Big segue to the Jews of Italy. Let's finish up with the Jews of Italy, and then I want to jump into Croatia. All right, so we left off right around 1500 because we had, sorry, I've got a little bronchitis. We had talked about the fact that in 1540 the Jews were expelled from the Kingdom of Naples because the Spanish were ruling the Kingdom of Naples, and they brought the Inquisition in. During the 16th century, the Jews moved from the south to the north, some to the Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth. And by 1556, things had begun to worsen in Rome. So, as a review, 1500, we're talking about 1500s. What's going on in the 1500s? The Renaissance. New World, Columbus. 1500. Expulsion from Spain. Printing press. Protestant Reformation. All these are great answers. It was the switch got flipped, right? Everything changed in Europe in the sense that there were so many new things that were going on, which is why I think 1500 really should be the date when we talk about early modern Jewish history. Yes, Cecil.
One event that looking back to history was the invention of the printing press.
Right, the invention of the printing press, which Ken had said, yes. And the explosion of the Kabbalah. And we have to understand that because, we're not, I don't think, we're big Kabbalists here, right? But it's really important because the Kabbalah became a very, very dominant idea within Judaism during the 1500s. Remember, I told you the Kabbalah says that people are reincarnated. That's what happens when you die. You are reincarnated. And if you asked an average European Jew in the 1500s, what do you think happens when you die? The answer would have been you're reincarnated because the Kabbalah exploded. Why did the Kabbalah explode? Because of the printing press. All of a sudden, the Zohar, the premier book of Kabbalah, was able to be printed and read. And people were very, very interested. Okay. So, 1555, Pope Paul IV establishes the ghetto in Rome. And Jews were branded the killers of Jesus, the killers of the Messiah, the killers of God, right? They were segregated to certain areas, which we called the ghettos. They were barred from owning property, and there was only allowed to be one synagogue per community, and they were only allowed to engage in the selling of secondhand clothing and some trade. So life was very difficult for Jews starting in 1555, and you remember that all follows Pope Innocent, right? Because he was the one who started everything. Around the 1570s, the Jews were expelled from the Papal States. What were the Papal States? There were several areas within Italy that were controlled by the Pope. And Jews who lived in those areas generally were protected by the Pope. Why were they protected by the Pope? We talked about that a little bit. General Christian principles about not doing violence to other human beings. Other popes had upheld that. They didn't particularly like the Jews, clearly, but they were more against acting violently towards the Jews than they were not liking them, right? They wanted to uphold Christian principles. And so the Jews are expelled from the papal states of Lazio, Marche, Umbria, and Emilia. And then after Pope Paul IV comes Pius V. And Pius V says the Jews could only live in ghettos of Rome and Ancona. So the Jews were further segregated to only specific ghettos now. Many Jews fled to the north, where the restrictions were a little bit less. So much so that there were by 1570s, there were very few, if at all any, Jews left in the southern part of Italy. Now, of course, the next big thing happens in 1800. So obviously, from 1570 to 1800, it just went along the same way. Jews had a difficult time, mostly in the north. And then what happens in 1800? Napoleon. Tell me something else that happens in the very, very late 1700s coming into 1800. So the year 1800 should go ding, 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 Napoleon in the west. What about the east? Just a little before 1800. Who is the Tsar of Russia? Catherine the Great. Catherine the Great comes along in 1792, 94. So when you hear 1800, you should think Napoleon. If let's see, if I'm looking in your direction, Napoleon in the west, Catherine the Great in the east. What did Catherine the Great do? She didn't allow Jews to live in Russia proper. Good. Pale of Settlement. That was right. You're right. Pale of Settlement. She annexed close to a third of Poland. Poland had been divided several times. And in its last division, a large part of Poland went to Catherine the Great. When that large part of Poland went to Catherine the Great, a whole lot of Jews came under the Russian Empire. Catherine the Great didn't want Jews. She didn't let them into Russia at all. So what did she do? She created an area, which you all know as Pale of Settlement in Eastern Europe, in which Jews were herded. You go to the Pale of Settlement now. That's where you have to live. This is Anatevka and Fiddler on the Roof. Those were the shtetls. And so the Jews were living in the Pale of Settlement. There were lots of other people who were living in the Pale of Settlement too. It wasn't only Jews. Any kind of oppressed minorities, gypsies and other poor people, other poor folk, everybody lived, all the, shall we say, undesirables were in the Pale of Settlement. And the Pale of Settlement continues until when? When does it end? World War I. Because what happens in World War I? The invading armies march over the Pale of Settlement and destroy it. So World War I ends the Pale of Settlement. What does Pale of Settlement really mean? Actually mean? It just means an area of settlement. Pale just means an area of settlement. That's all. Zisel.
Talking about the Pale of Settlement, wasn't it mainly in Belarus?
Wasn't it mainly in Belarus? It was a lot. I mean, the countries in that area have changed names several different times. But yes, Belarus was a large part of it. Yes. So in 1800, Napoleon comes in, right? And he marches across Europe. And the great thing that Napoleon did was he first emancipated Jews in France. And what was Napoleon's condition for emancipating Jews in France? Loyalty. In what way? Loyalty to France over your religion. Good. So, so Napoleon said, you Jews, you want your civil rights. Up until then, Jews could not vote, they could not own property. You Jews want your civil rights. That's fine with me, I'll give them to you. But in return, you have to give up your claim to peoplehood. You are not members of the Jewish people who have a homeland in Palestine. You are French citizens who happen to practice a religion called Judaism. If you want to give up your claim to peoplehood, you can have your civil rights. And French Jews said, sign me up. And so French Jews were emancipated. And then Napoleon marched eastward across Europe, and every country that he conquered, he did the same thing. He emancipated the Jews. So Italy was one of those countries. Yes.
How would they know if they gave up, quote,
Peoplehood.
Palestine or Israel, and even though they're practicing Judaism?
I'm sorry, say that again. How would they know if they gave up for their homeland
While they're still
while they're still practicing
practicing
Judaism and Shabbat? I'm not understanding the question.
They had to give up the belief that there's a homeland, right?
They had to give up the belief that there's a homeland. Yes.
No, they actually gave up that belief.
Oh, how did they know if they actually gave up that belief or if they were being like crypto Jews? that I don't know.
Then they can still practice the holidays.
Sure, but you can practice the holidays without having without deciding that Israel is your homeland. So I'm not sure how they knew that the people were sincere in giving that up. I think they just simply had to rely on when the French Jews said, fine, I renounce my claim to peoplehood and I pledge my allegiance to France. But they must have been following the French law, of course. Sure, and so that would indicate that. So, isn't that interesting? Because, yes, Cecil, and then it's a two-way street.
Because the Jews have to give up, say, being foreigners.
The Jews had to give up being foreigners.
In the specific example of France, the French have to accept the Jews as normal citizens.
And the French had to accept the Jews as normal citizens, which they weren't, I'm sure they weren't super happy about. I agree with you. But think about what this does for Jews, too. Because part of the reason that Jews were successful living in other societies under Islam, right, and under Christianity, part of the reason that Jews were successful is because of an ancient, a medieval doctrine established by the rabbis called Dina de Malchuta Dina, which said the law of the kingdom, the law of the land is the law. Because the rabbis understood when Jews were going to go and they live under a different system, Jews had to follow that system, or they were going to be expelled or executed, right? So, if you're living in a foreign land, you have to follow the rules of the foreign land. So, when Napoleon says you are now French citizens, I think that also meant that the Jews had to really relax their stringencies within Jewish law. You know, there's no law that says you have to eat pork on Sundays or something like that. But if there had been, they might have had to comply with that. You have to comply with the civil law of the place in which you live.
So that helped the Jews. What was Napoleon's motivation?
That helped the Jews. What was Napoleon's motivation? Cecil?
One possibility, especially in France, was that the Jews had already developed a system of credit, and Napoleon needed money, and there comes the credit, money to go warfare.
100% correct. So, that's right. The Jews controlled a lot of the trade, the commerce, and the money. Think of the Rothschilds. You had a number of very, very wealthy Jewish families. And Napoleon needed that backing, and he needed that money.
But in England, for example,
Correct. But, yes, but in the Crusades and earlier times, the fact that Jews were wealthy didn't save them. And that's true because there was such overwhelming anti-Semitism from the church and such overwhelming fervor, religious fervor from the Crusades that overtook any kind of benefit that the Jews gave the nobility.
I think that's the most important reason why it didn't occur in the Middle Ages and it did occur in Napoleon's time.
Correct. That's the reason why it didn't occur in the Middle Ages, but it did occur in Napoleon's time. Will you excuse me for 1 second? I just need to use the restroom, and I'll be right back.
Oh, no, we don't have time for that. Sorry. Okay, so you want to resume before we so rudely interrupted with the coffee? I brought something I'd like to share. Wait. Let's use the microphone. Yeah, there's a microphone right there.
What is this about? Oh, Mark Twain?
Oh, I know.
Okay, Evie asked me to read this, okay? It's called The Jew. The Jew made a marvelous fight in this world, in all the ages, and has done it with his hands tied behind him. The Egyptian, the Babylonian, and the Persian rose, filled the planet with sound and splendor, then faded to dream stuff and passed away. The Greek and the Roman followed and made a vast noise, and they are gone. Other peoples have sprung up and held their torch high for a time, but it burned out, and they sit in twilight now, or have vanished. The Jew is now what he always was, exhibiting no decadence, no infirmities of age, no slowing of his energies, no dulling of his alert and aggressive mind. And this was written by Mark Twain. So it shows a lot of respect for the Jew. Amen. You know, since I have the mic here, not that I'm a teacher, but I do want to share something with you. I just recently gave a presentation on the origin and development of Hebrew. And I don't know how many of you are aware of this, but Hebrew, it's considered the first alphabet of the world, even before the Phoenicians. I mean, it's theoretical in a way. And what really stunned me in my research is to read about the fact that one of the archaeologists who had gone to Egypt to do, his diggings there, and did some discoveries in Avaris, which was Goshen, and that's where the Jews had lived when Joseph invited Jacob and the family back to come to Egypt, and they lived there for quite a few centuries. But I think what stunned me was that this researcher has this theory that it was Joseph and his sons who actually developed the first Hebrew alphabet, even before the Phoenicians, claiming that the Phoenicians actually took it from the Jews or the Israelites. So, I mean, it's very theoretical still. But, it's really interesting what archaeology is finding out in Egypt right now as far as the diggings, etc. So I thought that would be interesting to present to you, food for thought, that Hebrew goes all the way back to Mesopotamia, basically. So it's one of the earlier languages, and it's the only sustaining language in the world, when you think about it, that it dates back to Mesopotamia. And the other thing is that what they're saying is that the Israelites were actually Canaanites, that even though the Bible says, and maybe I should bring this up with Rabbi Schuldenfrack, that the Bible states that the Israelites had gone back to Canaan and fought the Canaanites, but yet they were the same people, basically. At least they derived from the same, and then I guess they separated out. So I know, Lana, you do a lot of research yourself. I don't even know, you probably contest what I'm saying.
Okay, to a certain extent, I agree with you, but there's stuff that I'm not aware of the archaeological evidence of what's happening in Goshen. That's something new to me. But the Canaanite language and the Hebrew language are almost identical. We have to realize it all is a root of Aramaic and all those Semitic languages. So the earliest writings come out of the alphabetic writing comes out of hieroglyphics. I actually have a scroll of the history of this in the car. Anyway, the Egyptians could not cover all words in hieroglyphics. People were coming into the country. Okay. Another lecture. Okay. People were coming into Egypt. They had names that the pictographs wouldn't cover. So they created these things called cartouches. And it's like a circular oval thing, and they would put some of their symbols represented as sound. And the sound, so maybe a bird was like a L sound. I don't know what it was. So, but an S sound would be probably a snake. Well, some buyers in the Middle East, Holy Land, somebody got the bright idea of turning those symbols that were in the cartouche into a phonetic language. Now, originally, they were oriented to consonants, because that's the most pronounced things. B's and D's and whatever are the most noticeable things. And what we have in our language, in ancient Hebrew, is a place marker for a vowel. So let's take my name, Lana. It'd be LN in this phonetic language. Well, where's the vowel? It'd be at the end to make Lana, and there's something in the middle. My husband's middle name was Alan. The vowel had to be at the beginning for the A sound, but they didn't care what the vowel was. They just put a place marker because there was something that's soft. And so that's the beginning of it.
No, it's fine. It's fine. It's good. It's all good. It's all good. Thank you, Lana. Okay, so Napoleon marches east. He emancipates the country. He emancipates the Jews of the various countries through which he marches, including Italy. And he reestablishes the Sanhedrin. And it is called the Grand Sanhedrin. What was the other Sanhedrin called? The Great Sanhedrin. What was the Great Sanhedrin? Go ahead, Cecil. Yeah, the Great Assembly. It was basically like a very huge Supreme Court of ancient times. 71 members, huh? I was going to say 70, but I didn't realize it was 71 members, yeah, you're right. And he reestablished it in 1807 because as he has now emancipated the Jews, he wants to make sure that the Jews are going to follow what they say they will. And so Napoleon asks the Grand Sanhedrin, the members of the Grand Sanhedrin, which include rabbis, very prominent members of the Jewish society, a number of questions, 12 questions. Things like, Is polygamy allowed? Can Jews intermarry? And so the Grand Sanhedrin answered the questions for him, and he was satisfied with it, and everything was good. 1815, Waterloo. Right? And Napoleon gets defeated, and everything crumbles. All the countries in which Napoleon emancipated the Jews then take away their emancipation, including Italy. So Pius VIII, in 1815, reinstituted the ghettos. By 1848, there had been a revolution in Italy. So remember that Italy was a bunch of little kingdoms that ended up getting united into the country of Italy. There was a revolution, and Jews, as a result of the revolution, got their emancipation. We're talking about 1848 now. There was freedom of religion, and they were able to build these beautiful, large cathedral synagogues. 1870 saw the very, very end of the very, very, very last ghetto in Rome. By 1910, you had a Jewish prime minister, Luigi Lussati. And in 1913, you had a Jewish mayor of Rome, Ernesto Nathan. Of course, then came Hitler. What percent of the population were Jews? I don't have those numbers. It couldn't have been huge, but the Jewish population of Italy was pretty strong and very old.
What happened to the land that they were able to own and businesses when Napoleon had emancipated them and then they had to go back to get it?
Oh, that's a really interesting question. I don't know the answer to it, but we can take a pretty good guess.
Tell that to the Palestinians.
That's a real thorny thing. The question was, what happened to the land that the Jews had before they were put back in the ghetto, and what happened to that land after they were put back in the ghetto? And the comment was having to do with the Palestinians now. Look, I'm 100% pro-Israel, but remember, everyone, the Palestinian Arabs, Muslims, had that land as long as we had it, just about. They did. They just did. They took over the land in 600, and they had it from 600 to 1948. That was Muslim land. Look, we're all intelligent people in here, and I just want us to, approach this intelligently. Okay, we had it from King David, 1000, to, we lost it to the Assyrians, then we lost it to the Babylonians, then we lost it to the Romans and the Persians, right? Let's just say we had it from 1000 to year 1. We didn't, but let's say that's 1,000 years. Islam had it from 600 to 1948. That's 1,348 years or more. I just want to point that out. That doesn't mean that the land belongs to them or I think they should have it. it just means you can understand their position. It was their land for a very long time. Okay. There were Jews that never left, but it was, but for a lot of it, it was only a very small population of Jews. Yes. Okay, I don't want to go there. I like, as intelligent adults, I just want us to know the facts. Okay, so then Pius VIII comes in, reinstates the ghettos. We have the revolution. The Jews get their emancipation. We have prime ministers. And then Mussolini and Hitler come along. Germany occupies northern Italy. 8,000 to 10,000 Jews are sent to concentration camps. Where they perished. So by numbers, Italian Jews fared better than Jews of other countries in Europe. It was still horrific, but maybe a little better in Italy because the Germans only occupied northern Italy. So these were northern Italian Jews. Of course, we talked about last week. In 1965, we have Nostra Aetate, and the Vatican then rescinds the decree that Jews were responsible for having killed Jesus, and that the New Testament, as they call it, the Christian scriptures, supersede, are more important than, take over the importance of the Old Testament or the Hebrew scriptures. So Nostra Aetate and the Second Vatican Council said, look, the Jews can have their religion, they can have their covenant, they didn't kill Jesus, just let them be, basically. That was huge. In 2007, there were 45,000 Jews in Italy. 2019, again, 45,000. By 2023, that had decreased a little bit to 36,000, something like that. 3/4 of the Jews of Italy live in Rome and Milan, and they are a mixture of Ashkenazic, Sephardic, and Italian Jews, meaning Jews that came over before the destruction of the temple. Meaning that they weren't classified either as Sephardic or Ashkenazic. They just simply came over before the destruction of the temple. And then there were a number of Libyan Jews. We'll do Libya next week or in 2 weeks. Libyan Jews who came over after a number of riots in Libya in 1967. The Jews of Italy are mostly Orthodox. They're active in all fields, arts, politics, business. Many of them have prominent positions within the government and prominent positions within society. Reform and conservative Judaism is not officially recognized by the Union of Italian Jewish Communities, which is their umbrella organization. But there are several liberal communities in Rome and Milan and Florence. Of course, Chabad operates outside of that umbrella organization as well, and Chabad is in Rome, Milan, Venice, and Bologna. And the last thing I'll mention is that in 1986, Pope John Paul IV visited the Great Synagogue in Rome. So, by all standards, Italian Jews are doing pretty well. It's mostly an Orthodox community.
Going back to, you said Hitler kind of occupied northern
Mussolini did not. Mussolini did not. Mussolini did not espouse all of Hitler's viciousness. He was fascist for sure. He didn't love the Jews for sure, but he didn't have the same fervor to eliminate Jews from the planet. So the Jews existed, albeit not comfortably, but they weren't subject to the viciousness of the Nazi regime. Mussolini, in his very, very later years of the war, started to lean more towards Hitler's ideas, but he was never as vicious as Hitler. Why was Mussolini hated? If you're a dictator, you might be doing bad things to the people. So what is fascism? You hear it all around today. It's a socialist. Control. Yes, Cecil. It's a nationalistic movement.
That was closely associated with Nazism.
Closely associated with Nazism.
Didn't share the same horrible part of Nazism, but they were closely ideologically associated.
Yes, Ken, what were you want to say? A dictator who's not a king, in which the power is concentrated among a few and wealthy. So your question about, well, why didn't the people like Mussolini? Because he definitely wasn't out for their best interests. He was out for his best interests and his cadre, right? He was out for the interests of the people at the top. Fascism doesn't allow, as you talked about authoritarian, fascism doesn't allow for criticism. You can't go in and criticize the government. You can't go in and criticize the people. It doesn't allow for free speech. It doesn't allow for a number of things that we think are good things. Fascism, in a fascist society, you have part of the idea of socialism where the government controls a lot of the production and they eliminate competition, and the power is in the hands of a few, and the interests are not for the many.
What is the difference then between that kind of socialism and communism?
What is the difference between that kind of socialism and communism?
I say the differences between communism and socialism is the degree in which the government owns the property.
Partly. The degree to which government owns it. Partly. It's not like a dictator. Okay, so I hadn't intended to go here today, but since we're here, so communism is basically a political philosophy. Socialism is an economic philosophy. In communist countries, what is the goal? Everybody should be equal. Everybody has the same amount. Wealth is not concentrated in a few. We don't have a huge upper class. We don't have a class that is super struggling at the bottom and homeless. Everything is evened out, right? Remember, that's why when Lenin takes over, after Tsar Nicholas II, and Alexandra, Jews were happy about that. Why were Jews happy about that? Because we were on the bottom of the totem pole. And what did communism say? Everyone gets raised up to the middle of the totem pole. And we said, well, that's great for us. We're sitting at the bottom. We only have one way to go, and that's up. Cool. If you're at the top, the aristocrats, they weren't happy at all with that. Which is why then you had the White Army and the Red Army. The Red Army of socialism and communism against the White Army loyal to the Tsar, and then you had the Russian. You had a revolution of sorts between the White Army and the Red Army. Obviously, the Red Army ultimately wins, and those who are loyal to the monarchy lose. Okay. But what does socialism say? And this is important because we hear this all the time in our country, and we think socialism, oh, bad, bad, bad. Socialism, bad, bad, bad. No, it's not bad, 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 bad. The VA is a completely socialist entity. Public schools are socialist in nature. The fire department, the police department. What socialism says is that everyone will pay so that everyone gets something out of it. It doesn't say that it equalizes everything. It says that people pay into for the general population. Public schools are socialist in nature. Everybody pays for the public schools as part of your taxes. Now, there's a small selfish argument to be made. Well, I don't have any kids. I don't want to have to pay for that. Well, sorry. This is how our society functions. Everybody pays in so that everybody gets a benefit from it. Okay. What time is it? No, I don't have time to start. Okay. So we'll do Croatia starting next week. We are done with Italy. We are now officially done with Italy. Have a beautiful week, everyone. Oh.
Please, our people at home deserve to be heard. Susie Wozniak wrote, please tell that the Pope visited my cousin in Rome in her apartment. He personally apologized for the Holocaust. My cousin was in Auschwitz.
That's beautiful. That's beautiful. I wonder if that was during that visit. Well, I talked about the John Paul IV visiting Rome in '86, but that's a beautiful thing. All right, everyone, have a beautiful week.
assuming assumptions